The following program is sponsored by Happy Science.
Hello and thank you for accepting our invitation to happiness. Ryuho Okawa is known as a global visionary because of his deep spiritual insight and commitment to guide the world to a brighter future. To accomplish this, he founded Happy Science Group in 1986, which is now a global movement in over 100 countries. His vision and message to the world goes beyond the differences of race and language, empowering people with love. Together, in this 8-part series, we will explore practical ways on how you can be happy and how you can take part in creating happiness as a society. Illness and karma. Do they have a connection? Why do people fall ill? Is there anything to be learned from illnesses? Nowadays, modern medicine is making great advancements. However, cures are so rare that it leaves us thinking, why can't illnesses be cured by now? We can all agree that falling ill or watching someone go through a fatal illness is heartbreaking. But what if it existed to tell you, slow down, or pay attention to what's important? What if illness and karma had a connection? Before we go any further, let's take it to the streets and ask the people in New York what they think about illness and karma.
I would hope not. I would wish it would. I wish it would just be something more direct and proportionate to the to the grievance created. You don't want to wish sickness or death on people.
I would say I do not believe in karma, and I don't believe that it has to do with people's illnesses, because I try to live my life to the most positive extent that I can, and I'm actually sick. So you win some, you lose some.
No. Me personally, I've had like great friends, great family members who've gotten sick from things, and it's just really like for no reason. So if karma is a thing, then they definitely didn't deserve it. So, but I do believe in karma somehow, somewhat, just not in sickness.
What do you think? Is it possible that illness and karma are connected? Let's find the correlations in the following lecture.
Happy Science teaches that about 70% of all illnesses are most likely caused by spiritual disturbances. But this depends on illnesses, and we cannot make sweeping generalizations. As the physical body belongs to this world, it can sometimes suffer breakdowns in a worldly sense. For example, it could suffer from physical injuries or become incapacitated from playing sports. Anyone will certainly be injured if he or she falls from a high place. And those who have a badly balanced diet will damage their internal organs. If, on top of that, they do not do enough exercise, they will eventually get out of condition. To a certain extent, these symptoms can be observed in light of the rules of this world, and therefore, it is possible to do something about them in a worldly way. If you consume too much food and beverage that are causing many people to suffer from illnesses, or if you lead a lifestyle that can make you ill, it is only natural that you will become more vulnerable to illnesses. You need to have this kind of worldly wisdom and improve what needs to be improved. For example, people who consume excessive alcohol tend to fall ill, and heavy smokers are prone to illnesses too. In this way, bad health has different causes. Worldly factors too can cause illnesses, so if you want to avoid becoming ill, you need to make improvement in worldly aspects as well. People create a life plan before they reincarnate into this world. While it is truly mysterious, such scenarios do exist. This being so, what you need to do is to look at your current situation in your life and think about the kind of life you led in a previous life that would possibly produce a scenario like the current one. This might emerge under hypnotic regression, but even if you cannot do that, you can find it through self-reflection by contemplating on the possible causes for your particular illness. There are many experiences of the law of karma being confirmed in the religious field, and it also appears very distinctly in the medical field as well through the above-mentioned approach. The law of karma is usually apparent in the form of atoning for past lives. For example, if someone abused or killed others through violence in a previous life, it is often the case that he or she will in turn be abused or killed in this life. In other words, if someone caused physical damage to others by the use of violence, like breaking and severing their arms or legs, there is an extremely strong possibility that he or she will suffer the same disability in this lifetime. There are two options for the scenario of the next life for these kinds of people. They will either be put in the opposite position from the previous time, or in exactly the same situation again to see what they will do this time. If you think about this in terms of the law of compensation, you will be able to understand. So there are two possibilities, being placed in exactly the same situation or in the opposite situation. Another element that often appears in the symptoms of illnesses in this life is how that person died in his or her previous life, which illness the person died from, or whether he or she died in an accident or by some other cause. When some tragedy is engraved in the soul will be wounded and anguished by it for a long time. This anguish within the soul will seep out even after it gains a new physical body in the next life. In many cases, this anguish alters the astral body, which then manifests as an ailment in the physical body. It is often the case that distinctive birthmarks correspond to the way in which the person died in a previous life. The same is true with skin diseases. As the teachings of Happy Science already teaches, there are, of course, cases in which skin diseases appear as an allergic reaction in personal relationships. But if we explore past lives, there are also many cases where these are related to how that person died in their previous life. For example, those who died in a fire retain a strong sensation of the whole body being burned during their final moments. When these kinds of people are reborn, they sometimes have a birthmark on their skin. On the other hand, people who died in a fire and experienced extreme suffering, choking on the smoke, are sometimes born in this lifetime with respiratory illnesses, such as asthma and bronchitis. There are also people who are very scared of water. They are scared of entering the water, be it a swimming pool or a river. They cannot help but feel fear when they see water. A typical example is acrophobia. This refers to people who are afraid of heights. They become terribly scared when they go somewhat high up. When a past life reading is conducted, in most cases, they died by falling from somewhere high. There are also people who have claustrophobia. These people are scared of being shut or locked in. So they are scared to enter a small room or even an elevator due to terrible fear that they will suffocate. If a past life reading is conducted on these people, As you would expect, they have died in a way that involved being trapped and killed. People who were killed in a surprise attack in their past life will suffer from things like panic disorders and have extreme anxiety and fear. For example, they may have been ambushed by brigands while walking in the hills, killed by a mugger in the back alley, or by a burglar in their house. I have just given several examples, and in a similar way, if you find something that is unusual and cannot find any good reason for it from worldly causes, or if you simply cannot find any reason even in your childhood years, very often it is a manifestation of some abnormal experience that occurred in one of your past lives. Please be aware of this fact. When a serious illness is involved, there is usually a life scenario behind it, and it is something that cannot be avoided. As I explained earlier, if you want to change that scenario, you need to think deeply about why this is happening and resolve your own problems given in this lifetime. In Western medicine, attempts are being made to cure various mental illnesses and disorders that are quite common today, using methods like past life readings and past life regressive therapy. However, there is something about such doctors that I cannot agree with. When a person visits a psychiatrist with a serious illness, usually some form of spiritual disturbance is at work, and the patient is most likely possessed by a haunting spirit. For this reason, he or she should speak about this when hypnotic therapy is used. However, none of this appears in the report, but only the patient's past reincarnations. I presume that the experiences of the haunting spirits possessing the patient are included in what the doctors believe as past lives.
Okawa explains that illness and death are not something to be afraid of when we can understand that this is not the only life we live. Naturally, we don't want to fall ill to avoid causing ourselves and others pain. But when we do fall ill, it's important to understand the mechanisms of illness. It is worthwhile to know that 70% of illnesses have a spiritual reason. Sometimes illnesses come from karma from past lives. Karma can also show up as phobias in the present life. Let's listen to more examples on how not only our physical problems can lead to illnesses.
Religion adopts the position that spiritual disturbances do exist and warns that living people can be possessed by a spirit of the dead. So I believe that while an illness can sometimes arise as a result of a person's past life, it can also be caused by the spirit currently possessing the person. If a person is possessed by a spirit that is unable to return to heaven, the symptoms of the deceased person at the time of his or her death will appear clearly in the body of the person possessed. The person may suddenly develop an abnormally high fever, suffer an ague that makes him or her tremble violently, or develop other kinds of conditions on the body. The dead person becomes a haunting spirit, causing various physical symptoms to occur, such as cancer, a heart attack, asthma, or an agonizing headache. I have actually experienced performing exorcism on such people. The moment I did, they returned to normal. When a person develops what is known today as schizophrenia, his or her personality becomes split and dissociated. A child may start talking like an old person, or a man may suddenly start acting like a woman, or start using violence. The sufferer may sometimes rage violently or burst into tears. There are also times when the sufferers try to commit suicide or harm their family members. Sometimes people around them are so terrified that they isolate them behind bars in mental hospitals. Such pitiful cases do happen. Imagine a house. This house originally had windows, a roof, and a door, and was isolated from the outside world. One day, the front door blew away. The windows were smashed and the roof tore off. The original inhabitant still lives in the house, but since it is completely open to the outside world, robbers and burglars can now enter freely. This is a state of mental illnesses. There is no longer any barrier or protection, and anything from outside can freely get inside. The walls that used to protect the individual character are gone, allowing other spirits to enter the physical body anytime they want. Although the person's consciousness does return at some part of the day, usually other spirits occupy the body in turn. In severe cases, a person can be possessed by more than one spirit, mostly around 5 or so. There are also many who are possessed by around 10 spirits. Sometimes people say that mental illnesses are hereditary. However, they are actually not. There may certainly be people who are susceptible to spiritual matters, but spiritual possession is not something genetic. The truth is that in the household, there is a flock of spirits of the family members and ancestors who cannot return to heaven. For example, an ancestor a few generations back may have died in a misery and is unable to return to heaven. In that case, the spirit will come to possess its descendants and cause some kind of disturbance, making them ill, or it might cause them to suffer an injury or an accident. Even if the mentally ill person may appear to speak incoherently, what he or she is saying is in fact all true. It is just that the spirits inside the person changes. From the spirit's point of view, it is just expressing what it wants to say. People with mental illness are actually experiencing hell, because they are witnessing the world of hell while they are alive. They say things like, "Strange people come in here at night and talk to me." They do various things such as mutter to themselves or prowl around. But for them, it's the reality. In the worst state of spiritual disturbances, the victims are similar to a medium. They can actually hear, see, and sense spirits. They can no longer distinguish between this world and the other world. That's why they're sent to isolation. The essence of delusions in life are not knowing the right way to live. As in the teachings of happy science, during your time on earth as a human being, and not knowing that the soul is the essence of a human, and that other world does exist, and that you become a spirit when you die. So not being awakened to this knowledge of the truth is the very essence of worldly delusions. When they die, those who are not aware of these truths do not know as to what to do, as they still have life after death. They have no choice but to come to people such as their family. They have nowhere else to go, so they come to where they have a connection. Another form of worldly delusions is to have lived an egocentric way of life. In other words, the lost spirits didn't live for the sake of others while they were alive. We teach love that gives, but those people didn't practice it. They were egocentric and willful, didn't give love to others, and thought, there's nothing after death. Spirits and other worlds don't exist. These people become evil spirits after death and possess their descendants, causing trouble. The way to deal with these spirits is to teach them the basic truth in simple words, and the family members must also practice the truth themselves. Furthermore, it is not enough for the family members to hold a memorial service on their own. It is important that they hold an official memorial service, guided by a minister, at a Happy Science local branch or temple. Happy Science memorial services will serve to correct the mistaken way of life, and, at the same time, teach the truth of the spirit world. In addition, you also need to repeatedly explain to these spirits that they are piling up more evil by causing people to suffer out of their egocentric wish to be rescued, and they must do good deeds instead. When holding memorial services, offer prayer to the individual spirits by providing their names if possible. If an individual starts acting like a different person due to mental illness, observe the person carefully and listen to what he or she is saying. Then, you will be able to at least know if it is male or female. Then observe his or her habits. Habits that don't belong to that person will surely show. Look at his or her hand movements, the tilt of the head, speech patterns, eye movements, conducts, favorite foods, and so on. If you find his or her gestures, way of speaking, and lifestyle closely resemble a late family member, that's probably who it is. It is indeed more effective to hold the service for someone you clearly identified. It's no good to talk in vague terms. As you observe them, you may be able to guess who it is. Perhaps you could definitely tell if it's your grandfather on your mother's side. Then try to think why he's lost and teach him the truth. Therefore, it is essential for people living on earth to thoroughly study and practice the truth and undergo spiritual training. By doing so, they are moving toward the right direction, and so they could solve the issue. Through effort, even serious illness or mental illness can be cured. This being said, however, in reality, the issue is extremely severe, and in the process of tackling the problem, there may be counteractions. The sufferer may start acting violently, commit suicide, inflict violence toward his or her family members, or even go as far as stabbing them or setting fire. There are very difficult aspects to it unless you apply worldly wisdom as well. People whose character that has been taken over have most likely had setbacks in the important moments of their life. For example, they may have experienced setbacks in personal relationships during their adolescence, during their junior high, high school, or university years. Maybe their parents were divorced and one of them left the house. They may have lost a loved one, perhaps a parent or a sibling. Some may have gone through a huge shock after failing an important exam, or have felt like committing suicide when they failed in relationships and fell into depression. They may have had to run away when their parents' business went bankrupt, or may have become seriously ill. In other words, when you hate or strongly deny yourself, your soul will want to move away from the physical body. Evil spirits will take this opportunity to possess you. Generally speaking, they can enter you at times when you hate yourself, hate your life, and hate the way you have become. People become possessed at such times when they have experienced a great shock in their life. Although these issues are truly complicated and difficult, the fundamental way to deal with them is to study the truth and have the right views on life. It is essential to undergo spiritual training based on the right views on life. Exorcism requires a certain amount of Dharma power, so you need to call upon the help of those who have accumulated spiritual discipline. Please be aware of this as well. Sometimes, you may experience disastrous events in life, but try to minimize its effect and make sure that you do not carry over your karma into the next life. That is important. When an unfortunate sickness or a mental illness occurs, it is actually trying to teach a family something. In fact, the possessing spirits are trying to tell their descendants that their way of life is mistaken. They are telling you, if you continue that way, you will also end up like us. So please understand such happenings in a positive way and take them in a turning point in your life. Make them an opportunity to correct your life, to reconsider your way of life. If you do, poverty, illness, and conflict or strife in personal relationships will also serve as an entrance into the truth and a chance for you to find faith. They can be an opportunity to completely transform and rewrite your life scenario, as well as to pay off your karma from your past lives.
As a religion, we must say that spiritual possession does exist, and warn that illnesses can be the result of spiritual disturbances. Okawa gave the example of mental illnesses, such as schizophrenia being caused by evil spirits or lost spirits influencing and controlling them. In order to cope with this, those affected need to gain balance by attaining proper spiritual knowledge, repenting on their egoistic way of life, by feeling gratitude, and by being mindful and caring of others. Many of life's hardships can be paths to discover spiritual truth or the key to awakening to faith. Therefore, the important thing is to take these as turning points or lessons in life and make a fresh new start. Once again, thank you for accepting our invitation to happiness. And join us next week where we will explore what would God say today. See you next time.
I use the book it's like the emergency kit when you when you have to think differently, and that's when, oh, where's that book, and you have to look, oh, maybe I have to reread this and hopefully find an answer where you are now. If you're looking for a possible answer in life, then you will like this book.
Why are we here? How do we find happiness? What is the nature of the soul? Imagine if life's questions could be answered. Imagine if we could understand God's designs and intentions and discover more than our life goals, but also how to attain them. In the laws of the Sun, Ryo Okawa shows us the universal spiritual laws and how we can live in harmony with them. Learn how our thoughts influence reality, the nature of love, and the guiding principles on the path to enlightenment. This is a book with answers to life's questions for all in search of spiritual growth. From an author who writes to unite humankind in peace and harmony. The Laws of the Sun. Available now.
The preceding program was sponsored by Happy Science.